Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream of Canada's Technology Triangle.net user group. Tonight, I have Anthony Giretti with me, and so him and I will be presenting some .NET topics. Let me go ahead and share my desktop here, share my screen before I hand it over. Here we go. So tonight's talk is what's new in .NET 10. We got our first, Anthony will be kicking us things off with everything that's new in .NET 10. And then I will follow up and talk about some Azure Functions and what's new specifically in .NET 10 with that. So without further ado, if you have questions, please post them in the chat. And we'll try and get them answered during the session. We'll take breaks. Other than that, I'll hand it over to Anthony now. And Anthony,
Hello,
go ahead.
everyone. Okay, I'm gonna start to share my screen. One moment, please. Here we go. Everyone see correctly my screen? Okay. Let's go. So today I will give you some new info about .NET. So it's not a deep dive because I'm focusing on .NET 10, the runtime. I will talk about ASP.NET Core 10 generics. I won't discuss Blazor specifically, minimal APIs, or signal layer. And for a third topic, I will show you the novelties of C# 14. So it's very condensed, I would say, because it's very huge. So I needed to select the best topic, most interesting topics, and I spread them into 3 PowerPoints. So I will share different PowerPoint at the end of the session, and I will start with .NET 10 for now. So let's go. So what's new in .NET 10? I selected these 5 topics. These are the most important, the most useful, and I will show you why. So we'll talk about systemtext.json, the post-quantum cryptography. I will explain you what it's about and why it could be useful with .NET. There are some compression enhancement. I will show you some samples. We have a new WebSocket Stream API, interesting, and we have some novelties on macOS with TLS. So let's go with systemtext.json. Even myself, I was surprised to discover this new feature. I thought it was already implemented, but it was not. Prior .NET 10, when you wanted to deserialize a JSON payload, it was a bit confused when you had twice the same key, I would say. So in this example, before .NET 10, if you had twice the value, the JSON deserializer was only considering the latest value. Okay, so if you had the correct value, I would say 1, and by any mistake you override it with a second value in the same payload, it was the second value was taken. Okay, so to address that issue, in fact, it's a problem, a serialization problem, but on the deserialization, we have now something to tell, hey, I don't want this to happen. So Microsoft provided a new option for deserialization, and it's allow duplicate properties false. When you set it to false, it's generating a JSON exception, simply. So by default, it's true to avoid any incompatibilities with prior version, but you can now raise an exception if you have twice the same key in the same payload. So that's a great thing, and you can now use it. There is another improvement with systemtext.json. So I don't know if you're familiar with pipe, but pipe, it's a high performance API. I would say not an API, abstraction. I would say instead, to allow to serialize and deserialize huge amount of data. So if you have a huge data payload in JSON, instead of working with the text version, you can use the pipe object. The pipe object allows you to consume JSON payload in a more performant way. So it's faster and it's proposing better performance as well on memory. So there are very less memory allocation when you use pipe. So pipe itself is not new. In fact, now JSON serializer, I mean systemtext.json, support natively the pipe. What does this mean? So when you want to serialize an object, you pass it into the pipe. So serialize async takes pipe writer, the property writer of the pipe. It's setting it the new person else inside, and you close the pipe writer. Okay. Once this is for the writing part. Okay. So now you can do this. But the most interesting thing is when you want to deserialize, and before the last line, you see var stream pipe reader as stream. So when you want to read a pipe, you will use the reader property from the pipe, and you have to cast it as a stream and pass it into the deserializer. Okay, so it was a performant way, but Microsoft decided to implement the pipe reader deserialization automatically, natively by systemtext.json, I would say. So what does this mean? It means now instead of using a stream by yourself, you can use the pipe reader itself as a parameter of the deserialization. And it's still performant, but it's improving again that performance we gain with the pipe, because some memory allocation gain, I would say. So that's a good thing. It's not a very huge improvement because pipe itself was already available, but it's giving another chance to improve the performance of your app. So in reality, you won't use it very often because it's made for very huge JSON data to serialize and deserialize. So you might not use it very often. That's it for systemtext.json. We have now a very big feature. In fact, you might not need it in your daily life as a developer, because it's mostly for architects, or I would say DevOps guy. I will explain you why. So what's post-quantum cryptography? So it's a cryptography that resists to not cryptography. No, let me rephrase, please. Cryptography post-quantum allow the data which is encrypted to resist to quantum attacks. So when a quantum computer try to break your security, those algorithms provide better encrypted algorithms, so it will be resilient, more resilient. So we don't know yet if quantum computers can break it, but as Microsoft said, it should be very safe. So we have three kinds of algorithms. We have MLDSA, which replace the standard cryptography for digital signature. I mean, for example, document signing. This one is a very high performance, so it provides a bit less some security, but it's very performant. When you want to sign a document, you want to make it fast. The second algorithm, SHL-DSA, is more secure, but it's very slow. So it does the same thing as the previous one, but it's much stronger, but very slow. We use it in systems that require max cryptography security. And the third one, MLKM, is a bit different. It's mostly made for TLS implementation. So for now, TLS implements the ancestor of MLDSA, and they are implement a new TLS implementation with MLKM, but it's not yet ready. So in the near future, we might see TLS 1.4, 1.5, something like this. So as you can see, the code is very simple. You can find the complete example for all of three algorithms, but it's inside system security cryptography, so it's not a big thing, but you can use it. So if you are working in a company where you have a DevSecOps team, for example, you can tell your team to use that new algorithm to generate also new certificates if you manage yourself your certificates. So it's mostly the job of DevSecOps of DevOps teams, I would say, not you as a developer. Now we have you have new compression enhancement on gzip extractor. So what's new there? In fact, nothing. When you want to extract from stream some archives, sorry, the code itself won't change. In fact, Microsoft internally made some improvement, so it's faster and it takes less memory. So there is a very huge memory allocation enhancement there. The code doesn't change. Your .NET 9 code will run at the same, but in much faster. The other thing is now the gzip stream. Here we have two improvements. The performance itself, okay? And it's bringing now await async. It wasn't a sync before. So you can use the async version of read-to-end async, of reader read-to-end, sorry. And the very huge improvement is also the capability to extract all gzip member. So I provide you on the top, on the bottom left, a chart to explain what I just said. In a gzip archive, you can have several blocks, okay? Prior to .NET 10, with that code, you weren't able to extract all the block at the same time. Only the first was showing up. So now instead of making a loop, you can read in a single shot, in a single line of code, all your blocks. That's pretty much it for this. So not big changes in the code itself. They just brought VSync methods of reading a stream reader, in fact. That's it for compression enhancement. We have another great improvement there. So Microsoft brought a new API on WebSocket Stream, on WebSockets. So it's the WebSocket Stream API. In fact, it wasn't the case before, but on WebSocket now, you can, if your server allow it and your client allow it, obviously, you can now stream data. What's the usage of it? It's mostly the real-time streaming for audio, video, and binary data. So here, it's not about signaler. Signaler is a total different thing. However, even though it's different, it can use WebSocket behind the scene too. But keep in mind, this is not for ASP.NET Core itself. It's mostly for low-level coding when you want to stream data. It's also very useful for IoT sensor. That's it. Very interesting, but in your daily life, you might not use it anyways, except if you work with audio or video or any file you want to stream. That's it. The last thing I want to show you on Mac OS is the fact now, if you make any HTTP call, it's using automatically TLS 1.3 on Mac. And don't worry, if on your Mac version, Mac OS version, if TLS 1.3 is not available, not installed, or not managed, it's automatically falling back on TLS 1.2. That's it. That's pretty much it for .NET. Now we will jump on ASP.NET Core. One moment, please. Let's go with C# 14. My apologies. C# 14. Okay. Okay. Here we go. C# 14. Okay. That's my favorite part because there are some very interesting novelties there. Let's go. So, my bad. Excuse me, guys. I made a mistake. I mixed ASP.NET Core 10. Okay. This is ASP.NET Core 10. And now this is C# 14. Exactly. Okay. My apologies. I opened the wrong PowerPoint. Okay. Let's go. So for C# 14, you can see now my screen. We'll see extension number, which is really interesting. I will show you a good code sample. It's very straightforward. We have a null conditional assignment, more explicit conversions for span. We have modifiers on simple lambda, fieldback auto properties. This one was also very demanded. It was expected since .NET 6, and it has been postponed for 5 years now, and now it's there. We have partial constructor and partial events, and user-defined component assignment operators. So let's go. So extension member. looks new, looks confusing, but in fact it's not. Okay, what are extension members? In fact, it's a new syntax to create extension method on object instances, and new syntax to create a static function on static types. Okay, so what does this mean? Now you have a static class. You can name, for example, temperature reading extension, and you want to create extension method on instances. You will open brackets after typing extension, parentheses, and the name of your type, and you declare a variable, which means you are applying an extension on the instance of temperature reading object. Okay, and if you want to create static function on temperature reading, you open again in the same class if you want to on the type itself, or extension parentheses, the type itself, and you can create your static function. Keep in mind, if you want to create instance extension member, like I would say, I told you before, extension method, you don't need to put the static keyword on each function, unlike the static extension member that replace the definition of a static function. So there is a slight difference here, but in fact, when you consume it, it's totally the same. So it's not, I didn't lie, but it doesn't replace the old syntax. It's simply a new way to organize your file, because now you can create a very elegant class which encapsulates instance extension members and static extension members. When you use it, it's totally the same usage. So if you want to replace your code, you can. If you don't, the old syntax will work. Any question there? It seems confusing at the beginning, but it's really straightforward. No question so far? Okay. You can find the same example with more explanation of my blog too. So you can go to my blog and parse and even give some comments on the post if you want to. So it's also applying to all the slides I'm presenting to you. You can find the same content in my blog. Null conditional assignment. So it's an evolution of an existing feature. So if you remember, since C# 8 or 9, you had the opportunity to read properties without making any test on a nullable object. For example, if you want to read track.info, you could put a question mark on the object track, and if the object name tracked here in my example on line 2 was null, there were no exception when reading the info property. Okay, so now you can do the same approach, but you can now assign properties to nullable object. What does this mean concretely? So before, you had to make a test. If track is not null and track.info is not null, you could assign the duration property on track info duration object. Okay, in fact, in the track info object. You don't need any more. Now you can do it straight, like line 14, line 3. I got very often that question, what has happened if track or info is no? Simply nothing. Nothing will happen, like where you were reading the property duration by going through track and info. So it's very interesting, but I strongly suggest you to make unit tests to verify your behavior, because it's very easy to not pay attention to this syntax and make any error, any assignment error. The good news is also that Microsoft allowed that syntax on dictionaries. Okay, if the key doesn't exist in a dictionary, it's creating it, so no exception. And it's also working on nullable arrays, like line 21. So it's very interesting, but pay attention to the syntax. You could bring many bugs on your app, so please unit test it. Next, we have implicit conversion for span. So now, if a method like average level takes read-only span or span of byte, you don't need now to cast your bytes to spans explicitly, like 10 and 11. You can simply now pass bytes, and a C# 14 will allow you to use byte directly, because it's implicitly converting the bytes into span or read-only span byte. You might not use it very often, but it's good to know. It's good to know. We never know. Next. This is a very tricky one. Even myself, I discovered this feature. I wasn't aware about it. I will give you an explanation. So now, in the past, I would say, when you coded a delegate which was taking a ref in out scope ref read-only parameter, so you had to put it in the method signature, but also you had to add it in the invocation of the function, like line 4. Okay, so the type now is not needed anymore, because C# 14, when you had, once again, ref in out scope read-only to a type, the type is not needed anymore as before. So it's a very little improvement, but I wasn't aware myself. So it's great. You are saving some not some line of codes, but some you'll have, I would say, instead lighter code. I would say very lighter code, tiny lighter code. Yeah. Sorry for my English. So it applies on ref in out scope ref read only. Obviously, when you don't use these keywords, you won't need to put the type anyways. So it's only affecting those keywords. Next, fallback auto properties. This is the most expected one in C# 14. As I said before, it was expected for at least 5 years now. So what's new there? Usually before and usually when you want to perform a validation on a parameter in your set in the set keyword on your public property, you had to create and temporarily a private variable. So when you wanted to, for example, here test if the value you want to assign to your property by using set, you had to store it before in a private property and read it from its private property. C# 14 introduced the field keyword, which allow you to not use anymore private property to store temporarily the value you want to validate. So it's a very huge improvement in code readability, and this is my favorite one. Also, you can find a better explanation on my blog here, but I think it's very straightforward. Another one, it's not my favorite, could be useful, but why not? So now, constructor with C# and event can be partial. So what does this mean? You can have 2 files, 2, 3, 4, 5, the number of files you want, where you define the customer class. Each one defines if you want a property, a method, etc. And if you want to use a constructor, you have to declare the same constructor. So it's mostly used when you inherit from a library where you cannot modify. So you can now create a partial constructor, and you can enhance, I would say, some classes where you don't have the capability to provide some modification and bringing new behavior or write new constructor. So you must have, if you are using a partial constructor, you must use the same signature. Like line 10, 8 to 10, if you are writing this in a class and you want to write a constructor in another partial class for the same class, obviously customer, for the same object, you have to write exactly the same, else it won't compile. One exception, if you want to declare the constructor somewhere else, you can not define any implementation. You can simply remove a bracket and it's allowed. So if you want, for example, create yourself a library where people cannot modify the partial class customer, and you had a constructor, please don't add any implementation. Let the consumer of your class to define its own implementation. That's it. Any questions so far? You will barely use it, but it's good to know, I would say. And the last feature I want to show you is the user-defined component assignment operators. So what's new there? In fact, when you define a custom operator, prior .NET 10, you were not allowed to create operator on any assignment. You cannot do any assignment. So you were able to create user-defined operators on plus, minus, multiply, divide, but you could not apply it on plus equal, divide equal, etc. You could not define any assignment. So now with C#14, it's allowed. Simply. Even myself, I discovered that feature. I wasn't aware. It was not supported before. In the meantime, I never use explicit operator like this because I don't like the syntax. It could be misleading when you develop an application. So I prefer to not create my own operators. That's pretty much it for C#14. If you have any question, you can ask while I'm jumping now on ASP.NET Core 10, which will be my third slide. One moment, please. Okay. All right, here we go. It's taking some time. Okay. My screen is ready. So now let's talk about .NET 10, ASP.NET Core 10. What's new there? We have the server-sent events. We have new open telemetry metrics. We have better separation between middleware and endpoints. We have easy support of local multi-host, data annotation unification for classes, struct, and record, and some other improvement. So let's jump right away on server-sent events. What are server-sent events? In fact, it's not a new feature. It was already supported before. It's simply the fact that Microsoft implemented it natively. So instead of using, let me start from the beginning. What are server-sent events first? My apologies. Server-sent events were used to stream data. So it's another way to stream data from a server to a client. We had gRPC streaming before. We had JSON streaming before. We have now WebSocket streaming. We also had WCF, but it's outdated. And now we can stream over ASP.NET Core application. And what it does exactly, instead of sending a JSON payload, it was a novelty 4 years ago, you can now send event. So the content type will be text, event stream, and not a JSON object, for example. Okay. In fact, it's a JSON object, as you can see on the right. When you want to parse the item, you wanna parse, but the content type is an event stream. It's in fact event-based client side. Okay, so client side, you fetch the data by listening to the endpoint and subscribing to an event. So you simply use whatever the JavaScript client you use. It's simply an add event listener. You receive an event and you parse it as a JSON. Okay, so it's not new. The server sent on line 12 on the left, the type result server sent method is totally new. What it does behind the scene, and you could have made it before yourself, you are simply writing in the response, and instead of having a huge piece of code with a huge loop, write response and setting up the content type by yourself manually, you let ASP.NET Core doing it for you. That's it. That's all. So why we should use server-sent event other compared to other solutions, for example, JSON streaming. In fact, front-end side, JavaScript side, it's better for performances. It's more complicated, it's more demanding for the browser to parse in a loop JSON from a response. It's better to handle it via events. I was unaware it was more performant, but that's the new recommendation from Microsoft. That's all. Any questions so far? If you don't, I'll go to the next topic. Okay, we have nothing. Okay, next. So now we have new OpenTelemetry metrics. You might not using, but it's more for observability and tracing. But in your daily work, you won't do that. It's used on demand when you are being asked to track identity metrics. So when you log in, when you log out, as long as you are using ASP.NET Core identity. So the new OpenTelemetry metrics are available on the Microsoft Identity namespace. So if you use Microsoft Identity to identify your user, even though you are using EF Core to handle your user authentication, you can use your own model with EF Core. It's creating your user database, etc. Or if you can also use ASP.NET Core Identity to simply validate a token and any GWT from any provider. So in daily life, you might not use it, but you can, if you are being asked to track the user creation, user check password attempt, the login, the number of tokens generated, the token validation, the password modification, the successful signing, the sign out, etc., and even the MFA, you will be able to. So some metrics will be available if you use a GWT from an external provider, but obviously, since you don't manage yourself your own user like the EF Core library dedicated to ASP.NET Core Identity, you won't be able to track the user update, obviously, because you are managing it versus, for example, if you use Auth0 as a provider, it's totally transparent from your app. It's not on your app side. Okay. So if you now want to proceed with this, what you have to do is to add Microsoft ASP.NET Core namespace name into your metrics shown on line 21. Okay. So I put some comments on my code sample. In the case of you are managing the user authentication yourself in Microsoft Identity, you will be able to trust anything. If you are using an external provider, you won't be able to trust everything. Next. Now, some dev like you, like me, or any dev will be happy. I was really happy to see that now you don't need to have a proper order with your middleware. So now you can set them in the order you want. Your pipeline won't break. So I provided you the most common error. When you put use authentication before use routing, in fact, it was breaking. Now it's not breaking anymore. because the order doesn't matter. So you won't face that issue because you put authentication before. So that's a great improvement. It's also applying on custom middleware, and it's determined by at the compilation time. Okay, when you are compiling your app, some metadata are generated, and the framework ASP.NET Core knows in what order to execute them. And when you create your own middleware, it's also working, because if you work on your own middleware, you generally work on the request or the response by using the next method, because to switch between two middleware, you have to implement the next method in your custom middleware. So from that, because you are working on the request and the response, the framework is able to know the correct order, if you don't forget to implement the next function, obviously. Else, you won't be able to connect the dot between them. Another thing is the local multi-host. So it's not a feature where you can start multiple application or endpoints at the same time. It's simply it's a simpler way to manage your local domain name instead of playing with your host file JSON, your old. No, it's not a JSON file, sorry. Your host file where you define your local domain in the driver folder on the C on Windows. If you're not familiar with that, it's because it's simply to implement defined custom domain for your local machine, but in general, you don't use that. On my end, I use that once in my life. So instead of playing with that file, associating an IP address to a custom domain in that file, you can go on your ASP.NET Core app, and you can go on the launch setting JSON or the app setting JSON, or you can hard code it in your program.cs. Okay, so by this you can run different profile of your app, and each profile will expose a different domain or subdomain. It's good when you want to test if course works, etc., etc. So it's just for defining your own domain locally, and you have three ways: launch settings, app settings, or program.cs. You might not use it very often, but it's good to know. The next, it's not a feature, in fact. It's not a unification class, as Microsoft said. It's simply a bug fix. I will explain. Depending on if you are using a record struct class, or record itself, applying data annotation might not work properly. In fact, and that's why I put I just copy paste the Microsoft explanation. Depending on the scenario you use, some attributes were ignored, especially on record struct. So it was really problematic on record struct. It was not happening that often in the other scenarios when you use record or record class. The data annotation, like required or range or max length or whatever was not simply working properly. So it wasn't reliable. So Microsoft debugged it, but more than debugging, they unified the validation in a single namespace before it was spread between different namespaces, depending on your usage, I would say, for class, record, struct, etc., etc. So they unified it in a single namespace. It was totally transparent for you, but it's an internal recipe they have just reworked. That's pretty much it. And what do we have with ASP.NET Core 10 that I would love to talk, but I couldn't? For example, ASP.NET Core Identity now support passkeys. So I did not provide any example because the code was too huge and I would have needed 3 PowerPoint to show you a code example. So was it worth it? We have stricter routing validation. It's simpler than the word itself. What it means, when you provide a wrong parameter in a route which has a constraint in your APIs, now when you pass a wrong parameter, the error message will be clear. This parameter is not accepted because before the error message wasn't really meaningful. That's simply an error message fix. It's more reliable. You will be able now to debug it more easily because the message is more understandable. The other thing is HTTP2 and HTTP3 on Kestrel are getting better performances. What does it mean? It takes more hits. They allow more requests per second. I don't know how much, probably 25%, but the absolute number, I'm not able to give you that number. Some memory efficiencies too. And also, on the middleware pipeline, we have a better memory usage. While they implement the new usage of the middleware by allowing any order, they also improve the memory usage. That's it. I see there is no question so far. So thanks, everyone. And this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Anthony. That was awesome, as usual. Always some great insights that you bring for the .NET community.
Thank you.
And .NET 10, big release, lots of cool, great things. I'm still unpacking it myself. So those that haven't tried it, go download it, start exploring. There's a lot there. Okay, I will. Let's see. Do we have any questions from the people on the stream? We have.
I'll provide the slide. No problem. I will send it over to you, Callon. You can share and spread it to your community, and you can find the same content on my blog, like I said, so you won't lose any information.
Sure. Yeah, I'll put in the comment section, or Auntie, if you want, just message me in the chat and I'll add it to the stream. If you can't do it, but just put in a link to your blog or something. It will show up in the comments.
Okay, let me do if I'm allowed. I can jump. Oof.
If not, just send it to me in the private chat and I'll do it. But we have Jose. Jose Silva sent out hello to Callon and Anthony. So hello, Jose. Other than that, there's no questions. So if there are no other questions, feel free to add any questions during the chat. That was part 1 with Anthony. Part two is I'm going to do a quick talk now, talking about specifically .NET 10 with Azure Functions. So I will start sharing my screen, and yeah, Anthony, you're happy to stay around. If you need to drop, no worries.
I will follow it.
Thank you. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, and we start the presentation. Perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to Canada's Technology Triangle.NET User Group. Tonight is all about what's new in .NET 10. We had Anthony talking on what's new with .NET 10, C#, C# 14, ASP.NET. And tonight I'll be taking the baton, and I'll be doing a focus more on Azure Functions, specifically on .NET 10, and sort of migrating up into that new version. Okay, so my name is Callon Campbell. I'm one of the organizers of this user group, Microsoft MVP. I'm a independent consultant focusing on Azure .NET development. Those are my credentials. Feel free to reach out to me for anything. I usually put all my demos up on GitHub, so have a look there. So our agenda will be, I'll be focusing on two things. So one will be what's new in .NET 10 from an Azure Functions perspective. We'll be looking at upgrading from 8 to .NET 10, calling out some of the gotchas as part of that migration. And then second half will be Azure Functions Flex consumption specific. I do have a demo. I did this talk a week ago, or I guess it was 2 weeks ago at this point. I ended up deleting half of my demo, and I just realized today, so I was putting it back together. And I think it's going to work, but I don't want to turn it on. I have my function turned off because I want to demo something. So fingers crossed that does work. I do have slides to show if it doesn't. So let's hope the gods are on my side tonight. Okay, so .NET 10 upgrading Azure Functions .NET 10 and what's new. So with Azure Function, the runtime now supports .NET 10, isolated worker model only. This support's going out to November 14th, 2028. This announcement was made back in November of 2025 at .NET Conf, so it's been out for a few months now. I've already started to migrate my apps over to it and been seeing a lot of benefits. Some key points to call out: it only works on the isolated worker model, so if you're still using in process, you should be migrating off of that. It does support all the hosting plans with the exception of Linux consumption. So Linux consumption will not be receiving .NET support. So you should be migrating to Flex consumption if that's what you need to do. And just to call out, the images have been upgraded from Debian to Ubuntu for .NET 10 from the Linux perspective. Okay, so with .NET 8 and earlier .NET 6 and whatnot, we had the traditional host builder pattern. So we have our app on the left, straightforward application. So I'm configuring my services. I've added login, app insights. I've added health checks. I made it a little bit more than a simple hello world. Added dependency injection for my singletons, for my services. And that's typically how you'd be writing your code. Now with .NET 10, if you go File, New, Function App, you're going to get something that looks like on the right. And the most noticeable thing is going to be just how everything is set up. So now we've gone and migrated over to the Functions application.createbuilder. And it streamlined everything and made it much more simpler in terms of how things are set up. So you can see the exact same application from left to right. It just looks a lot cleaner on the right. Now, some of the key reasons for this change is just the alignment with the ASP.NET Core team. So that team has been using the web application.createbuilder since .NET 6. So Azure Function is now starting to mirror that pattern with the Functions application.createbuilder. This brings consistency across your .NET workloads. and provides you direct access to the services collection. So in the old pattern, you had to do, it required some callbacks, configure services where your services you would go into. So the new pattern is direct access, and it reduces a lot of the nesting and improves readability. Okay, key reasons continued. So it aligns with the .NET host builder infrastructure. The new pattern also under the hood, which is provides better performance, improved configuration ordering, and enhanced hosting abstractions. And again, this really aligns the Microsoft effort for unifying the .NET platform and reduces the learning curve. So if you know ASP.NET, you can migrate over, you can switch over to Azure Functions quite easily, and vice versa. Now, one thing to call out here with when upgrading to .NET 10. So if you're in Visual Studio 2026, there is no more right-click upgrade. Now Copilot provides a modern agent experience. So whether using Copilot, Claude, or any of the other agents, if you were to say, "Hey, agent, go ahead, take my application, migrate it to .NET 10," you would think it'd be a straightforward thing to do. For the most part, it does do that. It does upgrade your application to .NET 10. But what I found in the last couple months, and this might change, might be changing, I don't know, but the agents are only as good as the data it's being modeled off of, is that it doesn't quite go the whole 9 yards. It kind of goes, it gets about 90% done. And so what it will do is upgrade to .NET 10 by changing the version of the framework from 9 to 10 or 8 to 10. It will go and update all your NuGet packages to version 10. And then it stops at that, right? Your app will still build. If you have unit tests, the tests will still pass. You can run your application and it will still run. But it's not quite, it doesn't look like if you did a file new .NET 10 application as a Azure function, it doesn't look like that from the program.cs perspective in terms of, let me go back here, in terms of, it doesn't look like on the right-hand side. It still looks like the old host builder. And so your app will still run, but you are missing out on some key functionality, performance. So if that's what you're doing, if you're using the agents to help you to modernize and upgrade your applications, it's good. Just be mindful that what you want to do is you want your builder to look like the right side of the screen, not the left side of the screen. You can obviously manually go do this yourself. So I'm hoping the agents will just get better as this function app is upgraded, and it has more data to base its decisions off of. It will just do it naturally for you. Okay, that's it from migrating to 10. So if there's questions, just let me know, throw them in the chat. If not, I will continue on. So next one is Azure Functions Flex Consumption. There's no audience for me to ask who's tried Azure Flex Consumption, but what is Azure Flex Consumption? It's basically a Linux-based Azure Functions hosting plan. It builds on top of the consumption plan, where it pays for what you use, billing model. But it brings in a lot of the requests that came from the community for, we want it to be locked down. We want better hardware behind the scenes. We want it to scale faster. We want it to scale down to 0. So it gives a lot more flexibility. And it's also the default plan. So if you go and create an Azure Function app in the Azure portal, it's the default plan that it's going to default to, unless you are aware of what you're clicking on. It has so Azure, Flex Consumption is not entirely new. It's been out for, I want to say 2 years, but it's been out for at least over a year now. It saw a lot of love at Ignite last year in November. I'll have a link that I'll put in the chat about a lot of content that they announced then. So if you haven't tried it out, it's definitely worth trying out. I should call out, it does have a new purpose-built backend called Legion. There is a link in the at the end of my slide about it, but it's interesting read. It's what the Azure Container Apps is using behind the scenes for its backend. So this and ACA, Azure Flex Consumption, and there's a few other PaaS services are all using this new Legion backend that provides us scalability for very fast and large scale-out features. So some of those features are faster speed for scaling out than before. So you can go to hundreds of instances in under a minute. So that's part of the demo that I want to show. So I have my app turned off right now. I have a whole bunch of data coming in, and I want when I turn the app on, I want to demonstrate that it's going to scale to hundreds of instances to process that load. So you can scale to a lot more instances now. So this is the highest one. You can go up to 1,000 instances. The next highest is ACA with 300. It provides that support for VNet integration while still supporting scale to 0. It supports always allocated workers, reserved instances, to reduce cold start. It supports multiple memory sizes, including very smaller ones that they announced back at Ignite, and brings in the availability zone support. Okay, from an update deployment strategy, so Flex Consumption, one of the noticeable differences is it does not have deployment slots. So if you're used to Azure App Service or Azure Functions from a app service or a premium model, and you want to deploy a new version of your app, you could always deploy it to a slot, test it out on the slot, and then when you're happy, you could do the DNS switch and swap the two slots together. So with Flex Consumption, they don't have that support. So by default, when you deploy a new version of your app, there will be some downtime because it will recreate everything. But they do have this new thing called in preview. Documentation says it's in preview. The Azure portal does not say it's in preview, so be mindful of that. It still says it's in preview according to the docs. So I don't know if that's a typo. But what rolling update will do is basically 0 downtime for your deployment. So it's going to slowly drain the old version in batches, and it will redeploy your new version in batches. So that way there's no termination and your application doesn't go down. So although until the docs say it's not in preview, just be mindful of that. I wouldn't recommend it for production, but do have a look. Okay, so we'll go to demo. In the interest of time, I'll just show these parts of the screen through my app. So when you go to the Azure portal and say you want to create a new function app, this is the default. So you can see now Flex Consumption. It does compare all the different hosting plans. So we have Flex Consumption, we have the premium plan, app service, container apps, and then the old consumption one. So if you're on the old one for Linux, you need to migrate over to the Flex Consumption. So with this one, it can scale to 0, scaling behaviors, fast event-driven. It does provide the virtual networking support. It does have optional with always ready for dedicated compute for the cold start time. So you can see with premium and app service, always one instance is required, whereas Flex, you can scale down to 0. And then for those really big loads, when you need to scale out, you can go to 1,000 instances versus the 100, 30, and 30, and 300 for the other hosting plans. Next up, when you create your, oh, no, this is me recreating my function app. Yeah, I already have this created. So let's see, do I need to call anything out on this screen? I think it's just the instance memory now. So you have 2 megs, or sorry, 2 gigs. Next one is 4 gigs, and then you have 8 gigs. So they introduced this smaller size late last year. Okay, so I will come back to that demo. I'm going to go back to the first part of my application. I should have done this, but this is the function app migration. I don't see any questions in the chat. Okay, we're good. So I have a .NET function app here. So you can see target framework is .NET 8. If I go into my program.cs, you can see here there's a screenshot. We're using the host builder configure services. And if you look at local settings, we're using .NET isolated. So obviously if you're coming from, so what I'm showing you now, whether it's .NET 8, .NET 9, everything is the same. I guess if you were on .NET 8 in process, then this would be different. And if you're on .NET 6, well, there's a lot more upgrades that you need to do. So if I were to use GitHub Copilot here and say, hey, can we go and let's see, how long is this going to take? Can we go and upgrade my application? I'm not going to go do that because I already have it done. But if you want to do it manually, you can go change this to .NET 10. There are no .NET NuGet references that I need to change, but if there was, I can go manually do that, or I can go and say upgrade NuGet packages across the board. And if I go into an actual function itself, let's see, I'll go to welcome. Nothing changes here in terms of like the semantics of writing a function app. The attributes are all the same. So let me go here now to migrate it to .NET 10. Okay, we'll go back to my project file. So we can see now we're on .NET 10. There are no NuGet packages to call out. But if you go to program.cs, we can see now we're no longer using host builder. We're using the function application crate builder. And if I go down to my local settings, nothing here changed either. So we go ahead and run this. So going from 8 to 9, from 8 or 9 to .NET 10 is pretty straightforward from a migration perspective. The only gotcha is just host builder. So that was one thing I wanted to call out as part of this talk. How long is this going to take? Okay, so while that's working, let me switch over to this demo. And this one is the flex assumption scaling. So what I have for that is another application here. So this is one stream processor.function app. So it's reading off an event hub. So we can see here it's .NET 10 already. We can go down to my local settings file. Nothing in here. It is using the event hub's connection. And I have an event hub trigger. So this is going to be reading from event hub, processing the data that it reads, not doing anything with it, just going to log it, and that's it. So this I've already gone and deployed up into Azure. So where is bring my Azure portal in over here. Okay, so up in Azure, I had to go recreate my event hub. So yay, it's up and running. We have events flowing into the system. So a console app here that I downloaded. It's in the Azure samples. And let's see, is it going to show me? So I'm connected to it. Wow, that took a long time to build. And then it's been sending messages now for about the last hour. So about 2,000 messages a second, or events per second. It's simulating IoT data coming from cars, taxis, going up into Azure. So I'll put a link to the demo repo. This is an Azure sample application, both the function app and the vehicle generator, which it's a Python script. And all it is connecting up into Azure, posting events. And then the function app is consuming that data. So there you go. I have my demo one. The app is up and running. So I'm going to shut that down and continue with this demo. So this application, I right-clicked and I said publish to Azure. Not the best practice to do, but for this demo, it worked well. And if we come back to the portal, so here's my function app. Site is stopped right now, but here's my vehicle event hub. There's that welcome endpoint that I was showing. And we can see now it's flex consumption. Instance memory is 2 gigs. If I want to come in here, I can look at, sorry, this is a smaller one. So 2 gig is the default. You can go down to 512 megs, or you can go up to 4 gigs. I'm sure there'll be other sizes that will come in the future, but that's currently what's available. For me, I've gone and said, only going out to 100. It's a simple demo. I don't actually want it to go to 1,000. And if we go into my environment variables, I have my event hub value here to connect to. And if we go in the configuration, so there are a little bit things that are different. So I am using the rolling updates. I'm trying it out. So you can see here, it doesn't say anything that's in preview. But when you go to the docs, it does. And, from a stack perspective, we're on .NET 10. I don't know if it's my machine that's slow or the web, but okay, that's slow. I'll move along. So I got App Insights. It's not connecting or getting any telemetry right now because I have the app stopped. I don't know why. Just believe me, it's .NET 10. And so we'll come here. I'm going to roll the dice now and see if this works. If it doesn't work, my apologies for blowing away my demo and not realizing I had another talk to do for it. So let's come here. Yay, that worked. Okay, so we have one server online. Very quickly went to 32, 33. So we can see now it's starting to process those requests coming in. This should go up to 100 within a minute. And now because I still have telemetry, I can probably stop this now. I don't need to keep sending telemetry. So I'll show you where this is. So if you go to Azure Samples and then go to Stream Processing with Azure Functions, this is the sample that I'm using. So in there is the function app and the vehicle generated aspect. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So we can see it's starting to come online, it's processing, scaled up immediately to 33 servers. I hope that will go higher. If it doesn't, I'll cheat and show the demo. So this is the demo I did last couple weeks ago. So when I turned it on, it went from 0, went up to 102 servers within about 45 seconds. I let it play through all the messages that were in Event Hub, and within a short period of time. So by the end of my talk, it went down to 0. So it went from 0 and then scaled all the way up to 102, and then went back down to 0 when it was done. If you look at the Event Hub at that time, you can see all the requests coming in. Requests fell off, and then the throughput of all those messages being consumed. Okay, come back here. This makes me look like a liar, but still says there's 32. It should be going to 100. Says there's an error. No, I'll have to come back to that. I'm pretty sure everything got set up properly. So that is everything about Flex consumption. So if you run Azure Functions right now, very easy to switch over to Flex consumptions. It does provide you that VNet integration, allows you to scale down to 0. It does support minimum instances. So if you want to avoid any cold starts, you can always have one instance ready. And it allows you to go up to 1,000 instances if that's what you need to do. So there is no code change. So if I go back to my function app, there is no code change here in terms of like how you're hosting this application. It's just how it's deployed into Azure is where the code change is. This thing's still at 32, so I guess that's my fail for my demo, but at least it was processing something. But right now it doesn't look like it's processing anything. So my apologies on that. So if there's any questions on upgrading to .NET 10 from Azure Function perspective, or on Flex consumption and hosting, or migrating from any of the other hosting plans over to Flex consumption, let me know. If you're migrating from another plan, it's really just the CI/CD that you need to change. Using Bicep, Terraform, that's the preferred option in terms of scripting out your infrastructure. And then it's just where put your code into that host, whether it's Flex consumption, premium, app service. But if you're on the normal or the original host consumption plan, I would advise to migrate off of that. So let's see, I'll come back to my slides here. So just wrapping up, function application builder, in modern .NET, simplify the function development, provides cleaner configuration, stronger dependency injection, and more reliable isolated execution. The Flex consumption delivers very predictable, scalable serverless performance. You can have pre-warmed, control have concurrency control, and smoother handling of any burst workloads. Resources for tonight. So for .NET 10, if you haven't tried it, just go to get.net. It's a mouthful. /10. Download .NET today. If you're not using Visual Studio 2026, advise give it a try. Really, really cool. If you want to see what's new for .NET 10 in general, head over to learn.microsoft.com/.NET/core/what's new. And then from an Azure Functions Flex consumption, I tried to provide all the AKA links here so you can read them. And then here's the GitHub lab for Flex consumption. This one walks through more from an OpenAI perspective, but I'll put in the chat a link to that repo that I was doing my demo from. And then Ignite, they had a lot of updates. So let me bring up that page. Right, so I'll put this in the link, this chat. So from Ignite, there are a lot of announcements for remote MCP support, updates on triggers and bindings that went GA for remote MCP. We have new hosted MCP server in preview. There's now a built-in MCP server for authorization that's in preview. A lot of things are built better now with Foundry agents. So a lot to unpack here from an Azure Function perspective. We have support for Agent Framework 2.0. There's new durable task extension that now supports the Microsoft Agent Framework. There's updates on Flex consumption. So we had that new 512 megabyte insight size. We now have availability zones that went GA. Rolling updates, it still says it's in preview. If you want to migrate to Azure Functions, Flex consumption, there's some great documentation on doing so. There's updates to durable functions and durable task scheduler update. Open telemetry support is now GA. Rolling updates we already talked about. We now have new identity and networking everywhere by design. .NET 10, we have Aspire support, new Java 25, Node.js 24. So there was a lot to unpack from Azure Functions that were released at Ignite. So let me copy this. Come on, and put that in the chat. Okay, and let's see. Any questions from the community? I don't see any, so I appreciate everyone's time tonight. Have a great evening, no matter where you are, or maybe it's daylight, maybe it's Wednesday already, but enjoy your day, and happy to see you next time on the show. And again, if you need to reach out to me for anything, happy to connect. My LinkedIn, GitHub, X, and then I do have a blog, flyMaverick.com. So yeah. All right, I'll give another minute if there's any questions. Otherwise, I will say goodnight. So thank you, everyone. Good night now.